All it is woods, man.
Robert, have you ever heard of?
I know exactly where it is. In that area, every single person there goes, yeah, there's Sasquatch up there. I mean, you can just randomly ask somebody, like, do you believe in Sasquatch? Absolutely. And then they stand up, and then they start moving from tree to tree to tree towards the hogs. The biggest one, the one in front, goes back to all fours and takes off immediately. And what happens next is what scared the crap out of him, because it came off of all fours, hit the hog with two hands, breaking its back, grabbed it by the hind legs, swung it over to the tree and smashed his head on the tree, and slung it over its shoulder and looked right at him in his tree stand. All right, well, you want to ask questions? Do you have any questions for me?
Well,
just want me to go ahead and get into where this thing started.
Before we get started, so just to make sure, so I'm going to present. So this is Robert, and Robert is wanting to share some encounter stories to do with Bigfoot. He's got some stuff to share with us. So sit back, relax, all, and Robert, I'm going to just let you share what's on your mind.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I'm going to share a little background about myself really quick, because I think that might be important. I grew up in Oklahoma, eastern Oklahoma, in a little tiny town of Heavener. Nobody's probably ever heard of that town unless they're going to be listening. You might have a couple guys listening to this podcast from there, I'm sure. I've been all over the place. But most of my life, I've spent it in the woods, whether hunting, fishing, trapping, you name it. In 94, I got addicted to rock climbing, and I have been doing that ever since. I am 48 years old, so I've been doing it a very long time. Any chance I can get into the woods to go hunting or climbing, I'm gone. I live to do that. I don't really live to work very much. I work to be able to afford to go outside. As a child, everybody's seen the Patterson Gimlin film. So definitely piqued my interest as a kid, the whole Bigfoot thing. I moved to Oklahoma when I was about 14, well, maybe 13. And I got introduced to a side of the family that I didn't really know, my grandmother's side. And one of my cousins, he's actually a great cousin, had built a cabin. And he told me a story about this cabin that he built. And him and his girlfriend went out there. At the time, I think they might have been married, might have been his wife. And they had a bit of an encounter themselves. He told me the story, freaked me out. Then, of course, he showed me the cabin. Then it really freaked me out. As a 14-year-old, I was like, okay, because, I'm kind of used to going in the woods by myself. He said, don't ever do that unless you're carrying a sidearm. Yes, sir. Later on, me and a buddy of mine decided we're going to go do a little hog hunting. And we went out to a little area called Deer. It's out near, well, the closest next city, I guess, if that's what you want to call Mena, Oklahoma, is Mena, Oklahoma. And it's still a couple 30 miles through the woods to get there, maybe more. It's just on the Queen Wilhelmina side of the mountains. And we decided to go up, and we're just going to drive up this old logging road and see if we could find some hog tracks coming across the road and maybe get out and get lucky. And it rained a couple days prior to that. And we came around this curve, and my buddy came to an abrupt stop. And when he did, I knew exactly what he was looking at, because I was looking at one on the right-hand side, and he was looking at one on the left-hand side. And basically what had happened was we were looking at some very large barefooted prints that literally one stride crossed the road. So basically one stride was as wide as this old Ford truck. We got out. Of course, we grabbed our rifles and we headed off in the direction of those prints. And we got about 70 yards off the road. We were like, nah, we're not doing this. So we jumped back in the truck and continued on our way. But that was the first instance I actually seen actual sign of a Sasquatch. I mean, I don't know who's running around out in the woods making big prints like that. Um, the closest town is, between 30 and 50 miles away, and everything in between there is just woods. I don't know who would be doing that. So we were pretty taken aback by it. And of course, that was back in 80, 90, maybe 89. That was a long time ago. But it was very interesting to me. So that the subject of Sasquatch was definitely ingrained to me at that point. Once I've seen sign, it was that was a definite something's out there. If it leaves a track in the woods, it's more than likely living. I contacted you to talk about later on in life. I'd been living in Dallas, and in Dallas, I was running a climbing facility there. And the closest climbing area to us would have been Austin. It's about 3.5 hour drive. And the next closest area is Horseshoe Canyon Ranch up in Arkansas, near the Buffalo River region, which I'll get to in a minute. But growing up in Oklahoma, I know that there's a bunch of fluffy sandstone to climb out there. And so we started looking at areas just across the Red River there, near Atoka and the McGee Creek area, for boulders and rock lines to develop. We wanted to develop some areas so climbers in our general vicinity have a little closer area to go to. Really quickly, we found a lot of areas, so we decided. This was in 2010. I had 3 other friends go with me out to McGee Creek. And we drove all the way out to Highway 3 there and took a second exit like we were told to go in. It's, I don't know, 20 miles outside of Atoka, and then another, 10 miles down basically a dirt road. It's kind of concrete, I guess, blacktop. And we drove all the way to the end. It's kind of like just a circle parking area, and we seen that there was a trail that walked off into the woods. So we all got out. And we were just there to hike around and see what the boulders looked like and see if we could find stuff to climb. We were there a total of about 30 minutes before we left. We walked into the woods, and there was a trail that forked. One went off to the left and one went off to the right down into the hollow there. It was just and as we were walking down there, one of my friends was actually from D.C. He's a Jamaican fella. He was pretty much grew up in the city, and he was very new to rock climbing, and he was excited to get out in the woods because he hadn't done a lot of that. The other 2 friends of mine, of course, females, and another male that was with me, will remain nameless. And as we walked into the woods, we got in there, I don't know, a couple hundred yards. And the first thing we hear off to our left in the distance was a very pronounced whoop. And once that whoop happened, one up on top of the hill happened, another whoop. And then we got a long guttural, I don't even know what to call it, howl, I guess. And everybody's looking at me, and my friend Mario goes, what was that? I said, I can tell you what it isn't. I said, it's not a bear, it's not a coyote, and deer don't make sounds like that. And we continued on, and we started looking at some rock that we came upon. And the next thing we know, we hear another couple of whoops, and then a tree comes down. And at that point, we decided that we were going to go ahead and leave the area. So we turned around, went back to the car, and we actually drove all the way back around into Atoka, and then went back into Stringtown to look at some more rock that we had found on the other side of McGee Creek. But that instance right there really kind of drew me into that area. It was really interesting for me, kind of scary for the other folks. We did find another area. It took a little getting. We had to get, of course, permission from a couple of landowners because their property lines kind of crossed this outcropping of rock that ran for about a quarter of a mile, or maybe a little longer, actually. And our first outing out there, one of the gentlemen that we'd gotten permission from was a Choctaw gentleman, and him and his son came riding up on a four-wheelers and asked me and my friend Kinsey at the time, we were out there, we're going to camp out for the weekend. And they come walking or driving up on the four-wheelers. And I mean, the first thing out of his mouth was, hey, you guys camping out here tonight? And we're like, yeah, we're going to be here for the weekend. He goes, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And we're like, why? He goes, this is Sasquatch's home. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, really? He's like, oh yeah. He's like, everybody in this area knows. He goes, this is their home. He goes, come here, let me show you what I mean. We're on the right side of this road, and he takes us over to the left-hand side of the road. And there's an opening that you could consider a campsite. And as we cross this little creek to walk over there, he stomps his foot, and the whole thing echoes. So there's definitely a cave system or a hollow, a very large hollow space underneath this area. And he goes, they live here. And we're like, interesting. So we had a kind of an interesting conversation about that. And then he told us, of course, that, he finds, footprints in his yard all the time. When his garden gets robbed, they come in and take squash and cabbage and other things that he grows out there, and he just lets them do it. So I was very interested to talk to this guy. We sat and spoke for a while. So coming back to McGee Creek, same person, Kinsey, my friend Kinsey. We decided to go out there back in 2010. We wanted to find a little area that was in the place that we got scared out of that day. And we decided to go out there. That was in 2011. It was the second week of March. In February of that year, there was a terrible, terrible ice storm in Oklahoma. I mean, it looked like a bomb went off in Oklahoma, and just everything just got flattened. And in March, the weather kind of perked up a little bit on that second week. And as climbers, we like it a little bit cold for sandstone. Sandstone tends to get a little bit more friction to it for not only your hands, but your climbing shoes as well. So you tend to stick to it a little bit better when it's got cold temps, around 50s, even into the 40s. So we decided we're going to go out here because we'd already figured out the areas that we wanted to boulder, and some of the rocks have already, we had a couple of friends go out there and I already put up some boulder routes. So we decided to go out. We stopped into Atoka at the little liquor store there, and we grabbed a half pint of Southern Comfort because it was getting cold that night. So we got there and we pulled down. There is a ranger station there, a little house. And we pulled down right before the ranger station and pull off into a primitive camp area. And next to this camp area is a barbed wire fenced off area where people will pull in their trailers with their horses. This place is hardly ever used. McGee Creek is unless you're going fishing, the huge lake out there. But a lot of people go out there and ride their horses on the trail out there. It's about 7 miles out and back on that trail, maybe 9. So we set up camp. I go, hey man, I'm going to go ahead and start on campfire. Go ahead and set up the tent, get all the stuff out of the car. I'm going to grab wood across the street. There's wood everywhere because of the storm that came through and just knocked everything down. So I hop over this 4-wire barbed wire fence, and there's a tree there. It's got a Y in it. So I just start picking up long branches and snapping them off in between the Y to try to make firewood. And I'm also throwing this wood over the top of the barbed wire fence into the road so I can carry it a little bit easier into the campsite. And I did this for 15 or 20 minutes. I'm just snapping wood. I mean, just cracking it as hard as I could, trying to get stuff broke up. And anyway, get the fire started. We hang out. We take a couple sips of SoCo. It starts getting pretty cold. We chatted a little bit. He's like, "Man, let's just hit the bed. The girls are going to be here in the morning pretty early, so let's do that." And I was like, "Man, I'm okay with that. Let's do it." Anyway, we had 2 female friends of ours coming to meet us that morning. The only thing is we hopefully gave good enough directions for them to get there. We were thinking about that. because there is no phone service out there. It's you're in the middle of nowhere. So later on that night, I'm already I've been asleep. I passed out pretty hard, and the next thing I know, Kinsey is trying to wake me up. Rob, get up. I'm like, what's up, man? He's like, somebody's in our fucking campsite.
Oh my goodness.
Get up. And I hear something out there, and I know exactly what it is. It's my cooler. Okay. I have one of those little flip top, blue and white flip top igloo coolers, right? Just a little one, right? And whatever it was, okay, at this point, I'm thinking it's a raccoon. Kinsey crawls over the top of me and starts to unzip the tent. And he says, Rob, get the fuck up. He's in our campsite. He goes, Rob, get the fuck up. He just ducked down behind the car. I said, fuck it. Get that motherfucker. I thought for sure there was going to be a guy there. And when we came out of that tent all ballsy, they shriveled pretty quick when it stood up. And it was plain as day, buddy. Right in between 7 and 8 feet tall. It was as wide as my refrigerator, and it immediately just took off down the fence line there, and it sounded like elk running through the brush. I mean, it was a lot of noise. Okay. And then we hear the fence break. And then we continue to hear the woods just get destroyed for, I don't know, the next 100 yards or so. And the reason I say that is because the next morning, we did not get much sleep that night. We stayed up pretty much until the sun came up. I finally fell asleep. And then about 7:45, 8 a.m., my phone rings, which was weird because, like I said, you shouldn't have service out there. No cell
service, yeah.
And there's no cell service. I had one bar, and the girls, I guess they were just close enough when they called that it connected. Because literally when they called, they were literally passing our campsite. And I was like, hey, you guys just passed us. When you get to the ranger station, turn back around. We're going to be on your right-hand side. And so me and Kinsey go, we can't say shit to the girls. And I'm like, oh no, they're not going to, they will immediately want to go home.
Yeah.
And the girls pull in, and we haven't went and looked on the other side of the car. We didn't do nothing. We were just standing there waiting for the girls. Their girls come in. We greet them, of course. They're there maybe 10 minutes, and here comes a gentleman and his wife pulling a trailer with horses in it. And they pull into the little lot there that they had created just on the other side of the barbed wire fence where all this happened that night. So we decided we're going to go ahead and cook breakfast, and we started doing that over the campfire. We got that thing stirred back up and started getting some breakfast going. We noticed that the guy who's trying to pull his horses out of his trailer, those horses do not want to come out of the trailer. They are whinnying, and Absolutely. They backed out and ran back in. They backed out and ran back in. So me and Kinsey walked over to the fence, and we're like, is everything okay? He goes, I don't know what the hell is wrong with my damn horses. And me and Kinsey kind of looked at each other. I'm like, maybe we do. You know, that's what I was thinking. I'm pretty sure that's what he was thinking too. And he goes, well, I guess they're damn crazy today. And he put them back in the trailer, locked the trailer up, and backed out and went on down the road.
Oh, wow.
Well, since we were standing there, I start looking around. And of course, I look up. And at about 8 or 9 feet up, all of the branches, as far as you can see down this fence line, are broken. So I start looking on the ground. Now, the ground out there is not soft. It is a very rocky area. I mean, finding prints in this area would be next to impossible. Most of it, unless you're down near the river or the creek or the lake, is probably going to be a little bit of impossible. But there's a lot of leaf matter on the ground, and you can see where those prints were. Yeah. It was, when you run through leaves, you can see those prints, right? So of course we had to measure those, and I would basically have to do the splits in between the front and rear of those prints. But the biggest thing I noticed once we got about 20 yards down the fence line was that the fence was broken. And you can see right there at the fence line, there was a little bit of dirt, I guess you want to call it, with leaf matter on it. But you can see where he actually spun on his foot to redirect himself. And once again, looking up at between 8 and 9 feet up, most of the branches were taken out for the next 100 yards, basically. I mean, you can just look at all of the damage that he created running through there, which leads me to believe that when he was doing that, he had his arms up, or at least, you know what I mean? Like, it had to be.
How high up did
at least.
How high up did the broken branches go?
I would say they were in between. It was right around 8 to 9 feet. Okay, just about we'll just call it 3 feet over my head.
Yeah,
easily. And I can understand why. I mean, I guess if I was running for my life, I would put my hands in front of me. You know what I mean? And like run through the brush, trying to clear it out of my face, so I can understand that. When I think about it, I think about that, right? I think, like, what would I do if I was running away from something through the woods in the middle of the night? I would put my hands up and try to get all of the, make sure I wasn't getting hit in the face.
Sure.
So that's the only thing that I could think of that happened clearly. Needless to say, Kenzie was a little bit freaked out. He's never experienced anything like that before, and I kind of had just a few years prior to that. Was I freaked out? Absolutely. It wasn't something I expected to happen, and I've sat back and thought about what happened. Maybe it was me breaking all of that wood up, the snapping of the wood. You know, I thought about it. I was like, maybe that's what brought it in. It could have been the campfire. It could have been a lot of things. But I feel like snapping that wood for that amount of time,
sure,
maybe got him interested. So me and Kenzie decided to. We went climbing anyway. We went down back to the trail that we got scared out of, and instead of going right, we went back and left. And we bolted around a little bit, and I started to notice some tree breaks. And I had noticed one, and then another, and it all kind of started to go down towards the edge of the lake. And there is a cliff line that runs that area there down to the lake. And so I just kind of made a mental note. We climbed for the day and we left. We came back a month later in April. It had rained a couple days prior, and we got out there because we figured that the sunshine and the wind had definitely dried off that sandstone. And so we decided to go back out and see what we can find. Well, there's another area that we were told about, and we needed to go down that horse trail to find it. And supposedly there were 100-foot cliff line out there. We couldn't see it on Google Maps, but all the locals were saying, yeah, there's a huge cliff out there. Okay, let's go find this cliff. And what do they call it? I think they call it Wood Booger Hollow, which is kind of a Oklahoma word for
right.
For Bigfoot.
All right.
Booger Hollow is
it's
exactly
game time.
what it was called. Yeah. So we're going out there. We just want to see if we can find this rock. We're trying to develop rock there just because it's close, and I have a lot of climbers at my gym, just crap tons of people that want to climb outside, and this is just a great idea for us. And anyway, we decided to go down this trail, and we get about in between 3 and 4 miles in. And I'm seeing tracks, of course. I've seen turkey tracks. I've seen deer tracks. And at about 3 mile mark, I look down and I see a little barefooted print. And I'm like, huh. And I really take a look at it. And I mean, we're talking about size 6 or 8, not a very big foot, but it's barefooted and it's 3 miles, 50 miles, 40 miles from anywhere.
Oh, that's weird.
Down a trail. And I'm thinking that's a baby squatch foot maybe. And I go, hey, Kenzie, I put my Nalgene bottle down. And I go, hey, Kenzie, check this out. He goes, dude, you missed it. He goes, come here. And I, of course, go back to him. And sure enough, there it is, plain as day. And we measured it out, and it's probably 8 inches across the toes and about 16 inches long.
Wow.
And it was, and then just about 3 feet to the left of it, there's the little one right next to it. So, of course, we grab up pictures. We put the Nalgene bottle, our foot next to it. We snap all these pictures. Now, this is 2011. This is 2011. So it was a very long time ago. I really wish I had those pictures because we uploaded them to the computers at the gym, and then those computers went kaput.
Okay.
Yeah, I really wish I had those bad boys. That would be great. I would share them with you, but those computers were trash when I got them, and they were trash shortly after.
That's all right.
That is McGee Creek. The reason I bring that area up is because that instance really kind of made me think this is a place they stay. And I can understand why they stay there. There's plenty of game. There's plenty of waterway, little creeks to get in. I actually went out there and stayed a week and survived off fish for the whole week. Oh, wow. I just caught fish and ate them because they're just right there. It's readily available. And there's an area that we got down into, and I really want to go back there. I live in Pennsylvania now, so it might be a minute before I go visit. But it's a very sandy area down in this creek bed. And I always wanted to go down there because if it were me and I was trying to find food, it would be a really good area to go to. There's a lot of logs and stuff in the water. You could noodle out a catfish pretty easy. I'm pretty sure. Being from Oklahoma, we do that stuff. We will go in the water and stick our hands in rocks and pull out catfish. This is noodling. It is a thing. And that's basically what I did. While we were out there, I would go out and fish. And if I couldn't catch one on rod and reel, I'd get in there and get my hand and get wet and pull something out. It's a pretty fun little sport unless you grab a hold of a turtle, then it's not so good.
Right.
It's not. I got a few friends that are missing fingers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, those snapping turtles ain't no joke, buddy.
Yeah.
Bye-bye fingers. Yeah. Anyway, I understand why they're there. Like I said, lots of game, lots of water, lots of area, and no people. There's just nobody out there. I mean, nobody goes out there to do anything but, occasionally go out to ride horses on the trail, but it's not very heavily used. Now, something interesting happened in the years visiting this place because we started going out there pretty regularly just to boulder around because we had the two areas to develop. So we were going out there pretty frequently. So I told you that when we crossed the road to get firewood, it was a 4-wire barbed wire fence that I just, you just hop right on over. Mm-hmm. We come back out there in 2000, late 2011. I guess it would have been in the fall. I believe it was September, October. And now there is a 10-foot chain link fence all the way around everything.
Oh boy.
I mean, Jeremy, I mean everything. All of the McGee Creek area is off to the left, and there is this ranch on the right. And not only did they do the McGee Creek area to the road that takes you down to the boat dock, the whole area now has a 10-foot chain link fence around it. I
got to ask you questions real quick, Robert. I got some questions. This is getting wild, dude. Okay, so myself, listeners, we're not familiar with the Oklahoma map. Is any of this taking place in the eastern part of Oklahoma?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
goodness.
Yeah.
It
It would be considered that. Okay, so Hanobi is is right there, bro. Okay. Not only that, Boggy Creek is right there.
Is this by the Ouachita Mountains?
The legend of Boggy Creek. Okay, it's the Ouachitas and the Kiamishi.
Oh, no.
I'm on the Kiamishi side. Okay, the Kiamishis run into Atoka. Okay, Atoka Reservoir, just north of the Atoka Reservoir. That's North Boggy Creek, and then Boggy Creek runs out 43 there, all the way back to Sardis Lake into the other area that I told you about that was on the other side of this specific area.
Wow.
So 43 runs through Stringtown out of Atoka. You go through Atoka, you're going south. You take Stringtown over on 43. 43 will take you all the way back out to Sardis Lake. So in between 43 and Highway 3 sits McGee Creek. Okay. And from there to Arkansas, it's just woods, man. It's the Kiamishis run into the Ouachitas run into the Winding Stairs run into the Blues run into Queen Wilhelmina, and then the Podo Mountain Range, and then from there it's the Bostons and the Ozarks. All it is woods, man.
Robert, have you ever heard of?
I know exactly where it is.
Yeah,
I have a few friends that are interested in this. In this thing. Yeah, I've talked to a few people about this. Yeah, it's very prevalent where I grew up. Okay, it's like, hey, that's a bear. Like,
right?
We know they're there. There's a bear in that area. Every single person there goes, yeah, there's Sasquatch out there. I mean, you can just randomly ask somebody, like, you believe in Sasquatch? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, they'll just tell you. Like, it's not a conspiracy theory. I'll tell you that. We're all out of those, by the way.
Right.
There are no more conspiracy theories. It's all out in the open. Okay. And one of the gentlemen that he told me a story, and we actually just bumped into each other at and we started talking, and he told me a story. He went out and he had wanted to kill some hogs, and he set up on a trail. And I'm just gonna tell you this story real quick, okay?
Oh yeah, go for it, please.
And okay, so this is his story, not mine. And let me tell you, I believe this guy 100%. He has no reason to lie. He goes to church on Sunday and Wednesday. I promise you, this guy has no reason to lie about this. It freaked him out terribly, to the point where he won't go back out there. Like, he will not go back out. He's like, I will never go hunt out there again. No. Well, here's his story. He's sitting in his tree stand, and the trail comes down off the hill, and comes down into the gully. And he sees a bunch of hog coming this way. And he's like, all right, I'm about to get me some. And he decides to something takes his eye down into the gully off to his right. He sees movement. So he starts to look down there thinking that he's going to see more hogs. He does not. He sees two very large critters on all fours. And then they stand up. And then they start moving from tree to tree to tree towards the hogs. Once again, the hogs start coming down the hill. And once again, the biggest one, the one in front, goes back to all fours and takes off immediately on all fours, by the way, not on 2 feet, on all fours towards the hog. And what happens next is what scared the crap out of him, because it came off of all fours, hit the hog with 2 hands, breaking its back, grabbed it by the hind legs, swung it over to the tree and smashed his head on the tree, and slung it over its shoulder and looked right at him in his tree stand.
Shut up.
And just walked off. He said that hog was 300 pounds, no problem. At least 250 to 300 pounds. He said it took 2 hands to smash that hog, and then he finished it off by swirling it around and smashing his head against the tree.
Oh my goodness!
And when he was telling me this story, I'm getting chills thinking about it right now.
Me too.
Because I can understand how and why he will never go back to that area, especially when it looked right at him. Like, thanks.
I'm sure you can't share this gentleman's name or.
No, I wouldn't do that.
Okay, that's
without his permission. No,
yeah, I know. That was my sneaky journalist way of if you were into it, then would go there.
I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that was, and that, like I said, that's his story, and I guarantee I believe it. Because when he told it, I mean, I'm a pretty good judge of character when it comes to when people are lying to me, and I'm telling you, he was excited about it, and also it frightened him, which leads me to my next story. So as a rock climber, this one is actually prior to this. This is the one that scared me. Okay, so in 2004, me and my climbing partner Carl, we decided that we were going to have a little bit of an adventure. We climb in Arkansas. I was living in Fayetteville at the time, and we climb out in the Buffalo River region of Arkansas. Now, the Buffalo River is, as far as I know, it's the only river in the United States that's a national park upon itself. It is beautiful. It is untouched. It is magnificent. There is nobody out there except actual hillbillies. Okay. Mm-hmm. And us dumbass rock climbers, lots of us. But we decided we're going to go to work for the Boy Scouts of America. So I quit my job, and we decided to go ahead and go do that. So I was going to be the trekking director and the assistant climbing director for a high adventure camp for the Boy Scouts of America located there on the Buffalo River. Carl was going to be the climbing instructor for the climbing wall and all of that stuff. I was going to run the trekking group. Basically, the Boy Scouts were looking for their 50-mile badges, 50 miles on river, 50 miles on trail. So that was my job, to take, anywhere between 15 and 30 scouts down the river for 50 miles or on trail for 50 miles. It was a 3-day process, no matter what. We were pretty athletic guys. We spend all of our time either working out, climbing, or running around in the woods. So, and we do all of the working out and the climbing to go run around in the woods. So when we get there, Arkansas is basically little Colorado. I mean, it's a little tiny Colorado. It's amazing, and everything is either up or down. The Ozark Mountains are amazing. We had to go down to South Texas and do a little bit of Boy Scout course to get ready for what we were about to deal with at the high adventure camp there on the Buffalo River region. And once we got done with that, we got back up there, and basically we remained there from April through August in the woods in a tent. That's where we lived. So every morning we would get up and we would take a run on the trails. The short run was about 12 miles. The long run was about 16. And this is terrain that most people coming up from Louisiana and whatnot, they're not going to have a very good time with this place. Like I said, everything is up. And so we took a run that morning. It was a short one. We did 6 miles out and 6 miles back. We took the BRT high road is what we called it. So it was the upper trail. And then we came back on the BRT lower trail, which ran through and around right next to the river. The reason we did that is because during the heat of the day, it's nice to be able to just jump your ass in the river. Mm-hmm. Also, this river is lined with limestone cliffs, and it looks like they've been painted on. They're just beautiful. And we wanted to take a look at a few areas to see if we could actually go back in there and place gear on them and climb them. So we stopped at a place called Horseshoe Bend. Actually, it was just a little ways past Horseshoe Bend. And we decided to jump into the water. We stuck our stuff underneath this low-lying pine tree and proceeded to jump in the water. Well, I came out of the water and sat down. And now I'm staring at this beautiful, pristine rock that has never been touched, and I want to climb it. And as I'm looking up there, I notice that there's something kind of just standing there, not looking like a tree. And I'm looking at it. Now, the cliff is about 100 foot tall, maybe 120, and about 40 yards back off the top of that, there's two cedar trees standing there, kind of posted up. And there's something that's a little bit taller than those cedar trees just standing in the middle. And it is very human shaped. And I'm looking at it thinking, no. And I go, hey, Carl, get your ass out of the water and come here and look at this. Carl comes out. He's like, what are you looking at, that rock? I was like, yeah, I was, until I seen whatever the hell's standing right there between those cedar trees. He goes, holy shit, what is that? And at about that moment, it starts rocking side to side, and the trees are not moving. It was like looking at a monkey in a cage, you know, that anxious look.
Yep.
Now, can we make out any features? No. It's 100 and some odd feet up and 40 yards back, and he's standing in between these two cedar trees. But it freaks us out enough that we walked back into the water calmly, and we're looking up at the cliff line going, man, is that a Bigfoot? Like, what? That's got to be a Bigfoot, right? Like, what the hell is that? Like, is that a guy with a freaking ghillie suit on? Like, what is that? And I'm like, let's walk back out and see if it's there, because if it's gone, then we're not crazy. So we walk back out and we look up there, and it's gone. Those two cedar trees are empty in the middle. We're like, holy shit. We put our stuff on, and we casually put our shoes back on and casually trotted our asses down the trail back to camp. So, which is the beginning of this next story. So that was on a Saturday. Camp started. Oh no, excuse me. That was on a Friday. Camp started to fill up the next day on Saturday. We had troopers coming in, and my first group was kind of a small group. There was about 22 of them, and I needed to do 50 miles on trail with these kids. And we went out and we did that. I took them 25 out, 25 back. The following week, I had to do the same thing. And we had a troop that came in from Louisiana, and they said, oh, we've been to New Mexico, the Jamboree, and we hiked a 14er, and it was fine. I was like, yeah, that 14er ain't nothing compared to this terrain. Pack a lot of water and food before we leave. And the scoutmasters aren't exactly the most healthy dudes.
Sure.
I figured they're going to be lagging behind. But I wanted to take them to Steel Creek out. So leaving the camp, you have to go through Kyle's Landing, and then you're on the BRT for a long ways until you get to Steel Creek. So that was our destination. We have to take with the kids. I always take a high road. The low road, I don't want to risk it. So we get to Kyle's Landing. I explained to them, hey, listen, this is going to be really, really beautiful. Once we get to the top of this, you guys are going to get pristine views of the Buffalo River. When we get to the actual top, I said, we're going to sit down, we'll have lunch, and it's going to be about another hour and a half, 2 hours before that happens. And most of this journey is going to be uphill. I will probably be far in front of you because I've been out here for a few months, or a few weeks, and these trails are pretty easy for me. But I will check on you and come back to you if you need me. Just scream or holler or whistle. And I was like, hey, I talked to the troop masters, and I was like, just guys, keep an eye on the boys, and guys, everybody stay on the trail. So we start heading up the trail, and of course I have a pretty fast pace when I'm hiking, so I probably got, 70 or 80 yards in front of the kids as we're going up this trail. As I get up to the top of this trail, or as I'm starting to get to the top of this trail, I hear a limb snap, and I mean it was loud, man, like a big limb snap. Something snapped, and it hit the ground, and you could hear the snap and then the hit on the ground. So I actually took off running towards it like a numbnuts. Because, and the reason this is because in this part of Arkansas, it's the only part of Arkansas that actually has elk in it. Colorado brought elk into this area, and so sometimes they're in this area, and they could have just been, busting through the brush for all I knew. But I took off running towards it. This is where I get scared. As I see the limb that's laying now in halfway on and off of the trail, I noticed that it's probably 6.5, 7 inches around. And I look up and I see where it had snapped off. And then I look off to the left and there he was. He's probably 40 yards away. He has his arm wrapped around an oak tree that I would say is, I don't know, maybe a good 25 or 30 inches across, 25 maybe across the front. And his arm is all the way basically around to the front of it. And he is actually in a crouched position. And I can see half of his chest, half of his face, and of course his enormous arms and legs. And he was definitely male. We'll just leave it at that.
Gotcha.
And he's just there. And of course, I wasn't doing a double take. I was completely 100% focused and frozen, because at this point, that's when fright kicks in. His hand lets go as he stands up. And when he did, he stepped away from the tree. And that's where you can really kind of really suck in the massive amount of muscle on these human hairy people.
Yeah.
I would honestly, he looked like a big hairy dude, man. Like the best way to describe it, I was very locked in on him. He didn't have any hair on his pecs. He didn't have a lot of hair on his face, other than the normal man beard, really up a little high on the cheekbones. Very, very large eyes sunk back. Of course, his brow ridge was very defined, big, very large, flat nose, and his jaw line was it was enormous. These big, almost very thin lips, but it looks a little awkward. It's so wide. I'm getting a little flustered here. I would say he was probably, he looks like the biggest linebacker on an NFL, like a left tackle in pads without the pads. You know what I mean? Like he was so oddly big.
Yeah.
And the coolest part is when he started to turn away, he showed his teeth, like he grimaced at me. And I don't really know how to take that, but an ape will do that if you look him in the eyes. You know what I mean? And so he did that. He just kind of did this gnarly grin at me, and then he just kind of turned, stepped behind the tree, and then started to walk away, but kept the tree at his back. And then as he started up the hill there, I could hear the kids running up, and he would use his long ass arm to like push off of trees and to grab trees and move off of them.
Really?
Kind of like an orangutan would do. And his arms were ungodly long. The coolest part was being able to see not both of them. Hands were, of course, enormous, but the hair, the coolest part was, the hair hung long off of his arms, correct? Okay. It hung long. It hung long off of his arms. And then when he turned around, his hair was brownish red and black mostly. And then when he turned around, it was more of a a reddish brown and gray that kind of came down his back.
Wow.
Just like a silverback gorilla, really.
Yeah.
You know, that almost a V pattern that came down to an apex. His glutes, I can remember just how big everything was. His arms, his biceps were definitely larger than my legs. They were just, and not only that, even through all of the hair, there wasn't a lot of hair around the bicep area. So you could see it. It was kind of thin there, and you could see how massive and muscular this being was. I would represent him. You know those refrigerators with the two doors? He was as thick as one of those and definitely as wide as a refrigerator. It would be the only way that I could describe him. He was probably in the 7.5 to 8 foot range, and one of his pecs was as wide as my whole chest.
Oh my goodness!
Just one. I would say he was very barrel chested. Like, it was just very pronounced out to the front. And the reason that I know that is because of the way he stepped away from me. I got a very good side angle of this massive fella. Needless to say, I'm standing there in shock that I'm actually looking at one. And this was, of course, prior. This is 2004. This is prior to 2011. And I hear the kids coming running up. What was that? What was that? What was that? And of course, I've got to turn my attention to the scouts that are running up behind me. And I'm like, oh, guys, you missed it. You guys missed the elk. Like, I didn't know what else to say. Like, what am I going to say? I'm like, oh, I just seen a Sasquatch. I got 30 freaking kids behind me, ages 10 to 13. I'm like, no, you guys missed the elk. Funny thing is James, the guy that was one of the scoutmasters, he noticed that I was a little bent out of shape, if you want to say that.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, everything okay? I'm like, oh, let's just keep hiking and we'll talk about this later. Maybe. Like, just maybe. So we hike another hour or so, and we get hour and a half or so, and we get to this little overlook area where I stop the kids and we have lunch. And Scoutmaster comes back up to me. He's like, hey, so what happened over there? I said, did you see that branch that was across the trail there that I moved off as we walked away? He goes, yeah. I said, did you notice how fresh that was? He goes, actually, I did. I was like, yeah, what you missed was the 2 footprints right next to it. He goes, I missed that. I was like, yeah. So this is what I think happened, Jeremy.
Okay.
I think we spooked him.
Yeah.
And he was up in a tree. Okay. And when he jumped out of that tree, he grabbed that branch to stop his fall, and the branch broke.
Mm.
And then there was the 2 indentions. Now, I looked at that as the kids were as they were on me. Okay. And then I moved that branch off of the trail, and I'm looking at these. And they're in the ground a good 1.5 to 2 inches.
Oh, wow.
Like, he was a very heavy. If I were to guess how much he weighed, I would say he was, Andre the Giant was 500 pounds. He was bigger than Andre.
Oh, wow.
So he was in the 600-pound range. He had to be, man. There's just no possible way that he weighed less than that. Like, I'm looking at him going, there's no way they could weigh less than that. It's just all muscle too, on top of that. Like, it's all muscle. So he had to be in that range of weight, because I'm pretty sure him and Andre would have been looking at his chin. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
And Andre was a 500-pound man, and he would have been looking at him like, in his chin, or at least in the top of his chest. Because he was definitely a head taller than Andre the Giant, the wrestler.
Do you remember?
So I would remember
what the shape of the head of it looked like?
Yeah, I think their head shape is a little deceiving. Okay, because right back to the hair. Now, did it slope backwards? Yes. Does it look crowned? Yes. But his hair was extremely long over the top of his hair, as it came down across his shoulders. And on top of that, it was dreadlocky in a sense. It was very matted and very oily and very almost dreadlock like, coming down off of his head into his back hair. And the only reason I'm telling you this is because I was 40 yards away from this thing.
Yeah.
Like, he was right there. He was right there. And I was taking all of this in and trying not to shit myself early. Because, I mean, he could have took 3 or 4 steps and been on me. And then he would have, thank God I wasn't on the menu. He just wanted to get out of the way. But
you said you saw the Bigfoot walking away from you, correct?
Yes, I did.
Did you notice anything about the bottoms of its feet at all when it was walking? And I know it's really specific to ask.
Yeah. So when they walk away, one, they bring their leg up on the backside. They bring it up almost 90 degrees, right? Almost. I'd say 70 to 90 degrees. I'd say 70. We'll put it at 70 there, okay? The funny thing is that we all know that they kind of walk on a tightrope. And what you notice is that the hip kind of comes out and back as they step away. It's like their hip is, I don't even know how to explain that. You just can't, I can't do it. It's a completely different locomotion. If you're looking at it,
you're talking about the actual gait of the Sasquatch, how it's walking.
The actual gait. Yeah. And not only that, it's kind of weird. It's kind of like he's really soft stepping and taking small strides, but it's very pronounced on the backside, right? It's just very pronounced on the backside. Another thing I noticed was how it seemed that his leg and his foot were attached. There was more foot on the back of the femur, right? Like the femur comes down into your foot and it attaches to our heel on the backside. But it seemed to me, I'm just looking at it in my mind's eye, that there was just more foot on the back end and it was more towards the middle, which I guess would create that mid-tarsal break in the foot, right? Now, I had to look back at that in my head in 2004, right? Because after that, of course, you start looking things up. You start listening to Dr. Meldrum. You start to make friends that have these encounters. I made friends with a gentleman. I wonder if I can use his name. Well, he wrote a really good, interesting book about this. His name is Mitchell. I'll give you his first name, and then I will let you know. I'll actually send you his paper.
Okay.
He actually sent it to me before it got peer reviewed and before his book was published.
Sure.
About an instance that happened in Mount St. Helens, up in Washington. So yeah, I've done a little bit. I've done my research, and then looking back at that, and then taking a look at videos that you show, I can tell the difference between a dude in a suit and a dude that's not in a suit. You know what I mean?
Sure,
like,
yeah, definitely.
It's very apparent. It's very, very apparent.
Mm-hmm.
This was no dude in a suit. This was definitely no dude in a suit. This was the real deal. It scared the living shit out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually surprised I didn't piss myself.
Yeah.
Like, I was just standing there like, this is not happening. Like, you are frozen. There's nothing. And then everything afterwards, you're just sitting there and you cannot stop thinking about what you just witnessed. It's life-changing, really. It's one thing to see footprints. It's one thing to see a dude at night stand up behind your car and take off running and break everything. in the woods. But that was after this happened. So I was pretty shook on that after this. And then when that happened in McGee Creek, it just concreted my will to want to know more about this subject, about these creatures. If that's what you want to call them. I'd like to call them wood people because that's what they are.
Wow. Yeah.
They're somewhere in between us and say Neanderthal or something. It would be the best way to kind of explain it. And I don't necessarily think they all look alike like we think, because he didn't look like a classic Patty. You know what I mean? Like it.
Oh, sure.
He didn't look like that. I mean, he did in a sense, as far as body morphology and features are concerned, yes. But the way the hair was, the way he was built, his facial features, it wasn't that classic Patty look. He was menacing, really.
Sure.
Very wild. Would just as wild as you could. I can only imagine that if you were born in the woods, that you would look like that too.
Wow.
You'd have to adapt. You know what I mean? Like if you were born in the woods and you had to adapt to living in that type of environment, that's what you would turn into one way or another through time. You know what I mean?
That is a fantastic story, Robert. That's easily in the top 3 stories I've ever heard. And I've done this since 2019. And dude, have you shared this on any other programs or anything?
No.
Oh my goodness.
I've spoke to this with the people that were with me. My best friend in Oklahoma, who still lives there, because he was with me for the footprints, the first ones. And he I mean, he lives his life in the woods as well. He understands where they are and that they're there, you know. And like I said, most of the people in that general vicinity, that's normal. I mean, if you go to Washington, that's normal. Like you go up and you start talking to Native Americans, which I am as well. It's normal.
Oh, okay.
I'm Apache, Yaqui, and Spanish. Okay.
Wow.
So I understand some things about my culture, and if it's on a totem, it's a real animal. Mm-hmm. Most totems, as you come down, we're gonna have, you know, an eagle, a wolf, a bear. As you go north, they have a wolf, an eagle, a bear, and a Sasquatch at top.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason for that. Every single tribe, basically, in the United States has a name for it. That's odd, right? Like, why would they have a name for something that doesn't exist? And not only that, why would every tribe have a name for it if they didn't exist? It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
It just doesn't make any sense. And this is my speculation. If you and I were to prove in a court of law that Sasquatch existed, there's a lot of things that become off limits. The U.S. government would have to now protect those areas. So bye-bye logging.
Exactly.
Bye-bye oil. Bye-bye anything you want to do in those woods, because now you have a protected people of the woods in the woods. So if people wonder why the government would cover something up like that, it's all about money. Initially, it wasn't about that. I think initially when they started digging them up in Ohio in the 1800s, they didn't know what to do with that. Because, I mean, you're talking about early Christian Americans, right? Where does that fit in, right? Like, where does that fit in? How do you explain that to God-fearing people in 1800?
You're talking about the mound builders, right?
You're right. Yeah. Like, the answer is you don't.
Right.
You don't. You take that stuff, you get rid of it, and you don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody else that talks about it, you just go, "Oh, you're crazy." And then later on in life, you just get called a conspiracy theorist because that's the new out for truth. Like, oh, you're telling the truth, but nope, you're a conspiracy theorist. So that's the new
true.
out. But
it's true.
Back then it was, they didn't know how to explain it to people. So they just didn't. They just tried to whisk it away.
Yeah.
But if you look back and you start to do research and you start to look up all of these old newspaper clippings and stuff from around America in those times, there's actually a lot of it. There's stuff out of Arkansas where there's so much of it. There's a doctor that was in Arkansas who found one up in a cave with an arrow in its chest and brought all his bones back and had them downstairs for years. And there was an article about it in the paper. And then who came in to get it? Oh, the Smithsonian said, "Hey, we want to see those."
And the Smithsonian. Yeah,
and then bye-bye bones.
Dumped it in the East River along with all the mammoth tusks.
Right. So, I'm not a believer. I'm a knower when it comes to this subject.
I have a follow-up question about, I believe it was in the McGee Creek section. You said that you went back to that area and there was chain link fence that was 10 feet high where the barbed wire was.
Oh yeah. All the way around it now. All the way. So, and like I said, that road is a few miles long. And as it gets to the McGee Creek borderline, there's a 10-foot tall chain link fence that runs all the way down the road now. And then there's a road that turns left to take you down to the boat dock. And it runs it's a mile or so to the, maybe a little further down to the boat ramp. And it is completely 10-foot fence all the way down both sides. And then all the way back into the campsite to right, it stops. It stops right at this campsite that I was in. And then continues kind of behind it and then down the mountain for a ways. So there is an open area for you to go into, but now that other stuff, you can't go past the fence. kind of makes you go, I wonder why they did that.
So are they keeping stuff out?
To keep them in.
That's what I was just going to say. Yes.
Right. Like there's no reason I can think of for Oklahoma Game and Fish Commission to spend that type of money around the whole area if they didn't know. And that brings me back to this. When I go out there, I openly carry my gun.
Sure.
I do not, in Oklahoma, they do not they don't care. They just don't care.
Exactly.
I've ran into that ranger more than once and we have talked more than once. And the one time that I asked him about it, he just looked at me and said, I understand exactly why you're carrying that. I was like, you do? I was like, you understand there's a bunch of big fellas out here, huh? He goes, yeah, we know all about it.
Can you give me the name of that ranger?
I will not.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine.
He is the ranger there, and I guarantee you, he will not bat an eye and tell you yes.
Fair enough.
If you ask him straight up, are these things out here? He'll go, oh yeah.
Wow.
He will not bat an eye at it. But like I said, people in that area, they don't care to tell you the truth. They're some of the most truthful people that you'll ever come across. They don't care what you think about them. They don't know you. They'll just tell you the truth. That's how we grew up in Oklahoma. Like, you tell the truth or you get in trouble, and they're not afraid to say that. Like, no, I understand why you carry that. Because once you've heard the whoops and a tree crash behind you and had stuff come into your campsite, you tend to carry a gun when you go out there, even when you're rock climbing. Okay. I took my 45 with me no matter what. Now, would that hurt him or it or they? I don't know. I doubt it. I would probably just shoot it in the air. I don't think I could shoot one.
Right.
They're people, really. It's the only way I can explain them. Just wild, giant, hairy people would be that's the only way to really kind of explain it. There's no way I could pull the trigger. Even if I had a gun in Arkansas on the buffalo, if I would have had a gun, there is no way I could have pulled the trigger. No way. There's no way, because that is a living, breathing
Wow.
He's part of our ancestry somehow.
Mm.
There's no way that they don't have human genes. I would find it very hard to believe that they don't have some type of human DNA. I mean, I guess Melba Kitchen's kind of said that, right? Like, just like it's in between ape and human.
Mm.
And here's something that I thought was really interesting. I watched this video of a chimpanzee, and there were numbers being brought up on a computer screen. If he got those numbers right, 1 through 20, by pressing them on the screen, he'd get a treat. And then they would mix the numbers up and they'd leave the screen on, and then he would do the numbers even though they were scrambled, and he'd get a treat. And then they just flashed the screen, and all of those squares were now blank, and all of the numbers were jumbled, and he still got them right. And all they did is flash it at him 1 second, and he still got the numbers exactly right, which leads me to believe that if you grow up in the woods as a chimpanzee and you have to fight for your food, and you have to learn, and you have to use the trees and the woods to your advantage, your thought process is probably 10 to 20 times faster than the humans, because we lost that ability long ago. Now, if you think that if Sasquatch kept that ability, that's why he's the hide and seek champion of the world.
Absolutely.
Because he knows you're in his house before you do. And if you stumble onto one of them, it's because he wanted you to see him, or he was sleeping or taking care of an infant or something, and you just got lucky to walk up on him, right?
Wow.
Or on them or whatever. That's how I think about it in those terms. Like, the reason that they survive is because they're instinctually more adapt to their surroundings, and they have to think at such a phenomenal level to be able to survive. And the woods I could walk out in the woods today and nobody would ever know I was there. And I could survive out there, no problem. I grew up in the woods. I have no problem. I know the mushrooms you can eat. I can catch fish. I can kill deer. I can do that with a slingshot. So to be born out there into that, and then you have to watch what your parents do, and you have to learn all of these things and what you can and can't eat. Your thought process when it comes to being able to adapt to trees, because obviously they have a mid-tarsal break, so that foot obviously works really great for climbing. Sure. I don't see how it couldn't, because chimps have a mid-tarsal break. You know what I mean? They climb really well. So what that makes me think that their minds work a lot faster than ours do when it comes to that, because they are an apex predator, like a chimpanzee. People think chimpanzees are all cute and cuddly. They are not. They will rip your face off.
Oh, for real. Yeah, 100%. Yep.
They are vicious critters. The billy apes or the bondo apes, 6 foot tall chimpanzees that kill lions. Okay. Like, if those things exist, what makes you think we don't have one in the United States?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
It makes no sense to me. And there's a tribe, I guess it's Alaska, Canada, there on that border of Alaska and Canada. I mean, their story is when they came across the land bridge, that their big brother, Sasquatch, is the one that helped them get there. I mean, I even have a picture of their flag, and it's a Sasquatch. Their name actually translates basically Sasquatch.
That's
like. Well, I mean, and the deal is like, if you want information, you should probably listen to the people the natives, right? Like, those stories have been passed down for thousands of years.
Oh yeah.
I mean, people take the Bible seriously. Those stories have been passed down for thousands of years. Like, why wouldn't you listen to the people that lived on this land, who lived in those woods, who had to do that? Why wouldn't you listen to them? For information, if you want information, right? Like, it makes no sense. That's like you're, like you telling your grandma, I don't want to listen to you because you don't know anything, and you're 12, right? Like, exactly. It makes no sense. Exactly. You're an infant compared to her. She's been through it. Like, you should probably listen to your elders. And the American Indian tribes, those are your elders. when it comes to this side of the planet. And what I mean by that is Mexico to Canada,
Right.
North America, because every single person from Canada to Mexico, those are your Native Americans. So you should probably listen to them.
That is the interesting part. Their stories are very similar. You mentioned you're in Pennsylvania now. Have you started to look into how Bigfoot is out there? Are you near the Chestnut Ridge?
Yeah. You know what? Let me look. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
But I'll tell you right now, if I go out my door, there's a mountain on the right and there's a mountain on the left and there's one right behind me. And I can literally go deer hunting in my backyard.
There you go.
I mean, right there. I can walk outside and go in the woods and there are plenty of deer back here. We are in the, let's see, where would this be? I'm near Williamsport. So basically everything around us, all the way up into the Great Lakes, all the way up into New York State, it's just woods, man. Everywhere. It's the Catskill Mountains, really. And then you come out of the Catskills into Susquehanna. I'm on the Susquehanna River. It's all it is woods out here, man. Like I cannot wait to explore this place much further than I have. And you mentioned, what was the name of the place that you just mentioned?
So there's a region of Pennsylvania that's heavily known for Bigfoot and weird stuff and UFOs. And that's the southwest corner, Chestnut Ridge. Some really weird stuff that goes on over there. But there's also your area. You're getting closer to Scranton.
So Chestnut Ridge, New York, Chestnut Hill, PA, Chestnut Ridge Road, Apple. That's New York. Is that? Well, let's look at Chestnut Hill. Yes. Okay. Southeast corner.
It's southwest, like around
city,
around Uniontown.
Oh, southwest.
Yeah, southwest.
I'm looking on my map here just to see. I would suspect they're here too, where I'm at.
Oh, totally.
I mean, I'm telling you, buddy, it's just if I were living in the woods, I would be living in these woods. Did you say Union City or Uniontown?
Uniontown, kind of the area south of Pittsburgh.
Yep, I see that. Yeah. That's just a few hours for me towards the west. But yeah, in between here and there, all it is woods and rivers, man. Woods and rivers.
Oh yeah, totally.
There's hardly any people out here. All of the towns are very small, unless you go into like Allentown or Scranton, or Williamsport. Everything else on the outskirts is pretty much, rednecks.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And I say that with love.
Right.
I mean, I grew up like that. You know what I mean? Like when I got here, I have a bit of an accent, and everybody around me had an accent. I'm like, what in the hell? Where am I? Because I thought for sure they'd have a northern accent. I mean, I called my buddy up in Oklahoma. I was like, dude, I got something to tell you. He goes, what's that? I said, the country is country, no matter where you are in the United States. I said, all of these dumb bitches talk just like we do. He's like, are you serious? I was like, I'm telling you, man, listen. And we're in the bar and these guys are talking and he's like, they do sound like us. I was like, yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, I mean, everybody out here, everybody around here, they're all hunters, fishermen, outdoorsmen, everywhere you look. I mean, I got here right as deer season was starting. And, I went to Walmart and there's literally a line all the way from one side of Walmart to the other, people trying to get their license and get their tags.
Oh, exactly.
You're in a good area when. But yeah, I do want to explore this side of the country when it comes to this subject. And so I am going to look into it. I'll jump on the BFRO and see where most of those sightings come from and see what I can do about getting into those areas or if I'm close to those areas. Because I'm assuming I've got to be pretty close because I am nestled between just the mountains.
I think
everywhere here is up or down.
You'll be surprised once you start looking. There's a ton of Bigfoot action that goes on in Pennsylvania. But Robert,
yeah,
this has been an awesome, Absolutely fantastic chat. Your encounters
Appreciate you, brother.
are intense. The most intense I've ever heard, to be honest. Like, it's going to take a while to process it.
It took a while for me to process it, buddy.
Yeah.
A while. And, you know, I've heard other people's stories too. You know, you tend to come across people that want to tell you their story. And then I'm actually been friends with a guy since around 2000. He was actually part of my motorcycle crew. He was the lead guy for our motorcycle club. And he had something happen to him while he was a kid in Arkansas in the Folk region.
Oh yeah,
Folk, Arkansas.
Yeah,
that's where he was from. And from what to this day he will not tell me that story.
Wow,
that's how frightened he was. He's like, no, won't talk about it, man. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. Like he will not talk about it. And I understand now. I kind of understand why. One, there's this stigma of you telling your story and people thinking you're crazy. At
Absolutely.
this point, I'm 48 years old. I can care less.
Yeah.
I could. Like, I don't care what you think. It happened. I was there. Too bad. You either take me for who I am or you don't care. But I do understand how people with encounters, especially when they were young, might not ever want to talk about that.
Sure.
You know, I was kind of blessed to be old enough to wrap my head around what just happened, because it was freaking freaky, man. It changes you, everything about you, and I don't know that it changed me for the better immediately. It took a while for that change, the better side to come out of that, because I was pretty skeptical about the woods after that. I was like, man, you know, like, I love being out here, but shit, I really need to carry a gun. You know, like, what if that happens again? Like, what do you do? Like,
yeah,
what? I mean, because it scares you to your soul. You're confused, man. I was confused for a very long time after that. Like, oh, did that really happen? Like, am I freaking nuts? Like, you run through it over and over again. You're like, no, I was there. There it was. I see it. I can. When you think about it, you see it in your mind's eye clearly. I mean, I can literally see his skin and that it was kind of oily. I can see all of those things because you take it all in, man. Like, there's nothing else to do but sit there frozen and just let it happen. And as an observer, I was very observant because I was already kind of, one, you're never gonna be ready for that to happen. It's just, when it does, you're lucky. It's like seeing a cougar, man.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and I've been in the woods a lot, and I've had some encounters, and I've seen some cougars. But it's because I'm always in the woods. So people that aren't always in the woods, they don't really understand what's out there. You know,
exactly.
they're looking at National Geographic on TV or the History Channel or whatever, from their couch. They don't actually go out in the woods for fun and stay out there for months at a time in a tent. You know, like, I've done that. I would much rather do that, actually, sometimes, than go to work. I would much rather I wish I could work in the woods. That would be great.
Right. There you go.
I did for a long time. Yeah, I did for a while. I worked in oil. So, okay. That's what I did. I spent 16 hours a day in the woods, you know, trying to find oil. You know, once you get older, you're like, oh, I guess an office job would be a lot better. Well, you know, yeah, and then of course, like, you know, running a climbing facility. You know, during the week, I'm inside the gym. On the weekends, I'm guiding. I'm in the woods. I'm taking out Boy Scouts. I'm taking out patrons. Sure. I'm taking out clients. I'm taking out the team kids. You know, we're taking trips to Arkansas. We're taking trips to El Paso. We're trying to go to the Red River Gorge. We're always trying to get somewhere, or we're going to Colorado to climb a 14er or whatever. We're trying. We spend our time working to get outside, and I've always done that my whole life. I work so I can afford to go outside. 'Cause that's where all the fun's at. You know, that's where you experience life.
No doubt about it.
It's is outside, and rock climbing's taken me everywhere. I mean, I've been all over Europe and Mexico and Belize and Germany and Spain, Austria, just to name a few. I really enjoy being out there, even if it's just hiking. Just being in nature is the best place to be as far as I'm concerned. But when you have an experience like that, it tends to wreck your thought process a second, just for a little while.
Well, it's like everything, and I haven't had the privilege of seeing things like that, but I have experienced in Iowa, like stuff messing with my tent. I've got on audio, and we heard wood knocks, and we heard a big tree get pushed over in front of us. And this is in an area in Iowa. Me and my buddy were looking for Bigfoot last summer, and so I haven't had that like class A, like really crazy, being able to look at it, but I've heard some interesting things.
I don't know that I'd wish it on anybody.
Really?
But if you're lucky enough to have it happen, I hope it's I think that it would be okay with you, because now you've had time to research and see it and see the videos and hear the vocalization and all of these things, right? So you might process it a little bit better. In 2004, I had done my research, so I was not ready for that. It messed me up a little bit, just a little bit. That's kind of hard to admit, seeing I'm a big tough guy, right?
There you go.
Tough rock climber, whatever. But yeah, I mean, mentally, you have to wrap your head around that, and it's exciting. Looking back on it, it's pretty freaking. I feel blessed, and more than anything now, that I actually got to see one up close and personal like that. But it's like seeing a UFO, right? Once you see one, you never stop looking up.
No, you always want to see it again. I totally get that. Yeah. Yep.
You will always look
looking, up. Yeah.
I'm outside looking up right now. The stars are out. My neck is outstretched. You never stop looking up, and with an instance like that, you never stop looking for sign when you're in the woods. I'm always looking for sign for deer. And this morning I found some really good sign, because my dog jumped up a giant buck in my backyard, and now I found his rub line and heat line. Next season, I'm gonna feed him, make him my pet, and then put him on my wall.
There you go. There you go.
But yeah, I mean, I never stop looking for stuff like that now. We were talking about in McGee Creek. I found the brake line. Well, I went back to that brake line more than once, and I followed it, and it goes for miles.
Really?
And it's about the same size trees, and you can follow it. I followed it for at least a mile and a half. At least, at the least, I followed it for a mile and a half. I went down to the first point that I found it, and I went east first and followed that brake line, and I got to a point where it just stopped at the lake, at this little area where you can drop off the cliff line onto this beachy area and this big flat rock. And so then I turned around and I followed it back, and you could follow that thing all the way back into Wood Booger Hollow.
Wow.
It's there. And then I also started putting little treats out there every time I'd go out there. So I'd go to that brake line, and I found some antlers. So I'd put the antlers on that brake, and see what happened. I'd come back later, they're gone. I don't know what would take antlers unless you had a hand. They were gone. Or unless there was another human. Could have been another human, right? But I found some antlers. I thought, why not? I'll just leave them right here and see if they're there the next time I come. They were not. I came back. That was time I did that. I came back the weekend after. They were gone. Just wanted to see it. I heard about gifting.
Yeah,
I actually contacted the BFRO there. That year about this, and talked to a lady about it, and we were going to set up a time to go out on a little camp out there, and it never really happened.
Really, it never happened. Oh my goodness.
No, it never happened. We couldn't get connected.
Wow.
We couldn't figure it out. And then I ended up moving to Colorado.
Right.
So it just never really happened. But, I gave them all of the information. I gave them where to go and why. I told them about the prints. I told them about the encounter in the campsite. I told them about the tree breaks. I told them where to find them and how to find them. So hopefully they're doing research out there. That was my main goal. I wanted them to go out there and get that research. Like I said, I've told my best friend. I told the guy. Me and the guy that was there. We've talked about it plenty of times, and then I did contact the BFRO on that one because they need to go out there and take a look at that area.
Roughly,
and if I was
sorry, what county is that?
Atoka County.
Atoka.
I believe it's Atoka County. How do you
spell that?
Atoka. Atoka, just like it's Atoka, Oklahoma. It's on Highway 69.
And you said it's around 2004. You would have put that in.
Yeah. It was. Oh wait, was that 2000? No, that would have been 2011.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And it might have been after that. Like I said, I had to take all that in for a while before I thought to give them a call. Yeah, Atoka, Oklahoma. If you look it up on the map, it could be. I think it's Atoka County. I think that's what the county is. I'm trying to zoom out to see if they give me counties. But it might be. No, it's got to be Atoka, I think. When you're coming up 69, you come through Durant, hit Atoka, and then from Atoka you'll hit McAllister, and then and from there those are the Washitas. So the Washitas and then the Kiamishis, they're all basically the same mountain range.
Gotcha. Wow, Robert, this has been an amazing chat. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight.
Hey, I appreciate
this. Has been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Any final thoughts before we look towards wrapping things up for tonight?
Final thoughts. Let's see. I would say my final thoughts really are I really appreciate what you do. And I hope you continue to do it, and I hope you continue to bring awareness to what's going on out there. One way or another, it needs to come out. It needs to be mainstream, if you would. I think people need to know that they should probably protect the woods a little bit.
Sure.
They should care about it, because we're not the only ones out there using it.
If you'd like to make a special one-time donation to Bigfoot Society, you can head on over to our Buy Me a Coffee page. And I'd like to shout out someone who has bought us a coffee this last week, Mr. Waylon W. Colburn. His message is, I love the show. I used to listen to...
Insert the name of another popular Bigfoot Encounter podcast.
But they never have any new stuff. Keep up the good work, my friend. Well, I appreciate that, Wayland. If you'd like to buy me a coffee as well, you can head on over to the show notes and find the link in there. Become a supporting member of the Bigfoot Society podcast by going to www.patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society and receive extra episodes and early ad-free episodes as well.